Welcome to KR Films Entertainment Channel. Today I'm going to be explaining a 1957 survival drama movie titled Heaven Knows Mr. Allison. The story begins in 1944 during World War II, with a US Marine named Allison set adrift at sea after surviving a battle in the Pacific against the Japanese. After several days of drifting in the vast Pacific Ocean, Allison finally finds land and is stranded on an island. Called to receiver, Allison immediately enters the island with caution because he is afraid that it has already been occupied by the Japanese. After exploring the island, Allison finds no one and he believes that the island has been abandoned. So he doesn't worry about the Japanese soldiers. However, as Allison goes to a church, he's surprised by a beautiful nun sweeping the floor. Allison can't believe there is a woman who lives alone on the island. The nun is frightened at first, but after realizing that Allison there's an American soldier, she tells Allison that her name is Sister Angela, and it turns out that she was left behind by other missionaries who went to Fiji. Allison then asks Angela for permission to stay in rest at the church. Later on, Allison wakes up and sees Angela praying, so he immediately puts out all the fire because he is afraid that the Japanese would know their whereabouts. Angela apologizes for ignorance and offers food to Allison. After meals, Allison asks Angela for a cigarette, but she only has a pipe belonging to Father Phillips, who died a few days ago. Angela then explains that she actually came to the island with Father Phillips and just landed 4 days ago to find another priest named Father Ryan. They explored all the islands and found no one. But when they were about to return to the ship, it had left him, so they were eventually trapped on the island. The next day, Allison takes Angela to look for food, and luckily the island is abundant food sources, so they have no trouble getting clean water and fruit. As Allison is making spears to catch fish, he suddenly hears the sound of a wild boar. He tries to follow him, and it turns out that the wild boar lives in a hidden case. However, Allison can't kill him because a bamboo sphere will be able to kill him. Shortly after, Angela sees a turtle floating in the sea and tells Allison about it armed with a rope and raft. As Allison rushes up to sea to catch the turtle and asks Angela off to help him, Dallas manages to catch him, but suddenly he's pulled by the turtle until he falls into the sea, which makes Angela very panicked. The turtle continues to pull Allison to the bottom of the sea, but luckily Allison is able to return to the surface and also manages to get the turtle. As they're eating the turtle meat, Allison says that with the available fruit and all the food supplies on the island, maybe the two of them could survive for years, but they couldn't stand the island forever, hoping someone would come to save them. Therefore, Allison his plans to sail 300 miles using only a raft and head to Fiji so that Angela can continue her mission as a non. Even though the plan sounds crazy, Angela says she would love to try it, and they finally agreed to go on the crazy sail. Allison immediately fixes his raft while Angela makes the woven sails for their raft. As they tell each other their stories, Allison says he doesn't understand why a beautiful woman like Angela wants to become a nun, because he thinks that nuns are usually old women and that beautiful. Angela says that being a nun is our greatest happiness, and it is the same as Allison's dream of becoming a marine. Shortly after, a Japanese plane suddenly flows over the island, which makes them immediately. Allison believes the plane is a Japanese reconnaissance plane doing Reagan, and he believes they will return to the island. Allison finally decides to take Angela to the cave you found earlier and spend the night there, because he is worried that the Japanese will return. What Allison fears really happens because the Japanese bombers come back to bombard the island. Angela is very scared by the explosion, but Allison tries to calm her down by saying that the noise would not hurt them. After the raid ends, Allison goes down to look for what is left. But apparently the airstrike is destroyed everything, including all their food supplies and also the refs they have been preparing to set sail. Ellen Awesome is so distraught by the situation. Now they can only hope for the American soldiers to come and rescue them. Shortly after, the Japanese ships start moving towards the island, and they immediately to pull your battalion of troops to occupy the island. Allison realizes that the island is no longer safe for them, so they are forced to hide in the cave. The two of them try to stay calm, and the many soldiers go all over the island and start to get closer to the cave where they're hiding, but fortunately is still have them, so the Japanese soldiers come back down because they believe there will be no one on the island. Angela tells Allison of her crazy idea to give yourself up to the Japanese in the hope they would respect and unlike her, but Allison this against the crazy plan because he fears something worse for ill happen to her. Allison tells Angela not to worry and promises to find food for as Allison goes out to look for some fish. He is suddenly surprised by 3 Japanese soldiers were on patrol. He immediately hides behind Iraq, and the waves fortunately cover his body, which makes the Japanese soldiers unable to see his whereabouts. Allison finally makes it the cave safely and eat the fish with Angela, but Angela is disgusted. When she tries it and apologizes to Allison because she can't eat raw fish like that, Allison begins to worry about her, so he finally decides to take the risk by stealing food from the Japanese, even though it is a very dangerous mission. After tricking several guard posts, Alice manages to enter the food storage warehouse and immediately fills his bag with food. As he's about to leave there, some Japanese soldiers suddenly counsel Allison is trapped in their place. Allison immediately hides and tries not to make a noise. When a rat crawls on his body, you really can't get out of there and is stuck until morning, but luckily the Japanese officer orders all the soldiers together and the field, so Allison is able to escape easily. Allison thus finally able to return to the cave and get a lot of food for Angela. However, Angela is still upset that Allison left her alone in the cave and major worry. At that moment, Allison feels for the first time that someone cares about him and he starts to like Angela. The next day, Angela finds a flower and a comb that Allison made as a gift, for she happily accepted. But she tells Allison that her hair was cut short as a sacrifice when she made your first vows as a nun, and then asks if none could cancel her intention and live a normal life, like other women. Angela tells Allison that a nun is given 5 years from their first vow and there will be a second. Well, that will make them real nuns, and the next month is time for her to take the final vows. Allison seems happy to learn that Angela hasn't taken her second vows yet, as it means he still has hope. Not long after, an explosion is heard from outside, which turns out to be a war going on in the Pacific Ocean. Allison hopes that the Americans win the battle so that the Japanese leave the island. The next day, Allison comes out of the cave to check around, and it turns out the Japanese have left the island. Allison and Angela are overjoyed after the Japanese leave because they no longer have to hide in the cave, and the Japanese also left lots of food for them. In the next scene, they're again telling each other about their lives, and Angela wonders why handsome man like Allison doesn't have a life yet. Allison takes the opportunity to express his feelings that he loves Angela very much, and then it is a feeling he has never felt before in his life. After everything that happened, Allison really wants to marry Angela and begs her not to take your final vote. Else, however, Angela is forced to refuse his proposal by saying that she was engaged with her first vows and will be married with her final vows, which will make her a true nun. Allison looks disappointed with the refusal and makes the atmosphere a little awkward, so he decides to leave Angela immediately. The next day, Allison tells Angela to forget what he said yesterday and apologizes for being so impudent as to ask her to marry him. Allison realizes that he is also married into the Marine Corps, just like Angela did with her vow. In the evening, Angela finds a bottle in the rye sick and she immediately gives it Allison. After they tasted the drink, turns out to be Japanese wife. Allison continues drinking the wind until he gets drunk and starts to lose his mind. Angela tries to tell him to stop because he hasn't been anything yet, but Allison doesn't listen and even starts saying things that offend Angela. He wonders why a woman with such a beautiful face and smile wants to become a nun, because usually nuns are old and ugly women. Angela tries to divert the conversation by inviting him to play Japanese chess, but Allison doesn't stop and continues to babble, saying that they will like Adam and Eve because they would live on the island for years and no one would come to save them. The harsh words makes Angela cry and be terrified. Allison feels guilty and tries to calm Angela, but then only makes her even more scared, so she immediately runs away into the jungle even though it's raining heavily. The next day, Allison is finally able to find Angela, who has fainted, and it turns out she has a high fever. Allison tries to bring her back to the hut, but suddenly he sees Japanese ships approaching the island, so Allison is forced to take Angela to hide in the cave. The unexposed return of Japanese troops makes the situation even more difficult because they have not yet had time to bring food stacks. Allison immediately covers Angela with his clothes because her condition is getting worse. She continues to mutter. Allison is very worried about Angela's condition, so he finally decides to sneak into the Japanese camp and steal some blankets, for even though it's a suicide mission, the mission initially goes well because the Japanese soldiers are training, but a soldier suddenly comes to the tent and finds Allison. The soldier tries to alert his friends, but luckily, they are all training and can't hear his voice, so Allison is able to kill the soldier using the dagger. Yes, and after that he throws the soldier's body into the sea. Upon returning to the cave, Allison immediately covers Angela and is forced to take off her clothes, or else Angela would freeze to death due to her wet clothes. The next day, Angela finally regains consciousness and she's very shocked. After finding her clothes off, Allison then explains everything that happened and apologizes for scaring her, which made her run into the jungle and get sick. Angela is very grateful for what Allison did for and can understand Because she believes Allison is a righteous man who this behave with her, she also tells him that she ran that because she was afraid of him, but because he was afraid of what Allison said, that they would never get off the island. Meanwhile, the Japanese of apparently found the body of one of their friends who has been killed by Allison, so they set fire to the entire jungle to find out who has killed him. Allison tries to stay calm when the Japanese soldiers start to approach the cave. One of the Japanese soldiers manages to find the hole in the cave and is heard asking his friend for granted to blow up the cave. But fortunately, an explosion suddenly occurs, which turns out to be an American airstrike. Allison is very happy and tells Angela to watch the battle and how American planes destroy Japanese troops. The battle continues lead into the night, so they are forced to wait in the cave. However, Allison realizes that the American ships will not be able to enter the island easily because the Japanese have 4 artillery pieces. Allison finally decides to come out and secretly disarm all the Japanese artillery so that the American ships can land on the island. Allison manages to complete his mission and make America win the battle, even though he is also slightly injured due to an explosion. The next day, the American ships finally begin to approach and immediately deploy the troops to the island as Angel of tries to treat Allison's wound. Allison realizes that this is his farewell with Angela. Even though they couldn't live together, Allison says go bye by, saying that he's very grateful to have known Angela and wishes her happiness. Angela says the same, and she will never forget a real man like Allison, who was looked after so well and respected the honor of a woman. Shortly after, American soldiers find them and immediately take Allison to give him treatment. After weeks of surviving on the island, the two of them are finally rescued. Thanks for watching.